Tonight on CFTK-TV News, a Terrace Council meeting showed off how Northern Health is doing recruiting-wise, the Terrace RCMP are seeking a missing woman, and a judge acquitted a driver in a case that saw a toddler killed.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin, and here's what's making news in the Northwest and beyond. Many residents are looking to get information on what's being done to combat the many medical issues in the North. We're able to get some answers at a newer Terrace City Council meeting. Last Friday saw a committee of the whole meeting held in the afternoon by Terrace's City Council, and it was notable for the fact that an update on recruitment and retention for Northern Health was presented by a delegation from the authority led by Julia Pemberton, a Northwest HSDA senior operations officer. Other members of the health authority to attend the meeting included the Recruitment Services Regional Manager, Emily McFarlane, and the Medical Director for Central Cluster in Prince Rupert, Dr. Andrea Geller. It was McFarlane and Geller who acted as presenters of a PowerPoint outlining data and information regarding recruitment. Outlined information included the current position vacancy and filled rates, the breakdown of how local health authorities are looking membership-wise, as well as recent hires and the turnover rate. Once the numbers were revealed, it was then explained how exactly the recruiters did their jobs, in addition to strategies that they used in their efforts to gain new workers, like the 12 or so new ones that agreed to work in Terrace since November of last year. Those who wish to learn more about the meeting can look at the Northern Health PowerPoint on the City of Terrace's website and watch back the city's Facebook live stream of the event. For CFTK TV News, I'm Cale Maslin. A notice was recently put out by the Terrace RCMP as they asked for help from the public in order to find a woman that was recently reported as missing. The woman in question goes by the full name of Melissa Caroline Bellotti, or Missy as a nickname, and she was last seen on April 5th before being officially listed as missing on April 7th. She's been described as a 34-year-old, 5'5" Caucasian woman weighing around 120 pounds while also having brown hair, green eyes, and she was last spotted wearing a red hoodie and black jogging pants. Anyone who has any idea on where she might be located is asked to call the Terrace RCMP at 250-638-7400, or if they wish to remain anonymous, BC Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. As initially revealed in a news release, some changes have been made to the Prince Rupert Port Authority's board of directors. John Farrell, who spent nearly a decade on the board, is leaving his position and is being replaced by former Prince Rupert Mayor Lee Brain, while chartered professional accountant Hillary Cassidy is also being added to the board. Cassidy's addition also likely has to do with her inclusion on several other boards like the BC Lottery Corporation. As for Mr. Brain, he brings his experience not only as an ex-mayor, but also from his current jobs as a facilitator, mediator, and community engagement specialist. A judge has just acquitted a driver who was on trial in the death of a toddler as a baby named Ocean died in a crash in downtown Vancouver, which sent an SUV up onto the sidewalk, hitting the girl and her father. CTV's Ben Bilger has more from BC Provincial Court and a warning: some of the video of the crash may be disturbing.
Lawyers for the Crown and defense agreed on most facts in this case, saying the only thing left for the judge to determine was intent. Was the accused driving in a manner that is a marked departure from the way a reasonable person would drive? In the judge's eyes, he was not, so the ruling was not guilty. Facing charges of dangerous driving causing death and dangerous driving causing bodily harm, Syed Moshfeghi Zadeh's freedom hung in the balance. He ran a red light at Smythe and Hornby in July 2021, causing a crash with a McLaren sports car, which pushed the defendant's Ford Explorer onto the sidewalk where it hit Michael Haiva, who was holding his 2-year-old daughter Ocean. She did not survive. The light was red for 20 seconds before Moshfeghi Zadeh drove through the intersection at 47 kilometers per hour without touching the brakes. It is the functional equivalent of driving with a blindfold on for a city block at rush hour in downtown Vancouver, argued Crown Prosecutor Brent Anderson. Moshfeghi Zadeh's lawyer argued his client was inattentive and negligent, but not criminally negligent. The judge echoed those remarks, calling the crash a momentary lapse of attention. In every case where it is a departure, but not a marked departure, the courts have said it is civil negligence, said Judge Catherine Denhoff. Now that you've been acquitted, is there anything you'd like to say, sir?
We have the greatest sympathy for and compassion for the parents and the family of the deceased child and Mr. Hiva for the injuries that he suffered. That has weighed very heavily on Mr. Moshfeghi Zadeh.
The Crown declined to comment. It now has 30 days if it chooses to file an appeal of the judge's ruling. Ben Milger, CTV News, Vancouver.
Coming up next, a pair of Richmond warming centers are set to close. Welcome back. Richmond is set to close its 2 overnight warming centers, and one homeless advocate warns the timing could be worse. CTV's Kevin Chirac has more on what the city is doing to address those living on the streets and a response from the mayor.
This overnight warming center in Richmond is one of 2 set to close on April 15th.
There's going to be a lot more people on the street, obviously.
Hugh Freeberg spends his nights handing out meals to those living on the streets and says the situation is only getting worse.
Another person died last week, one before. I'm seeing it now like once a week, you know, or at least a couple a month in Richmond, whereas before it was like that, you know, maybe one a year.
He says those unhoused are a mix of people battling addiction, refugees, and some even elderly pensioners who fell on hard times. James Casperson manages the overnight warming centers and says there's a plan for people who've used his nonprofit services.
We've got folks lined up for treatment. We've got a couple people whose tenancies start on April 15th, and then we do have referrals to more appropriate permanent shelters in place for the rest.
He says last March, the city's homeless count reached 162, but believes the number is dropping.
We've placed 25 people into permanent housing with wraparound supports, which outpaces our best years so far.
Mayor Malcolm Brody admits finding a solution isn't easy and says the city's constantly working with the province and federal government for more funding and resources.
In a perfect world, we wouldn't have any of the tents around, but we live in a region, in a province, in a country where there are plenty of homeless people, and so we try and support them as best we can.
The Ministry of Housing told CTV News Richmond's emergency shelter spaces operated at 87% capacity from January to March. Kevin Chirac, CTV News, Richmond.
The Vancouver Park Board is cracking down on camping and sheltering in city parks. Commissioners recently voted on a new set of rules as the city looks to get a grip on the homelessness in the community. CTV's Craig Krause reports.
Setting up camp and spending the night in Vancouver parks could warrant a knock on the tent by bylaw officers as the park board imposes further measures on sleeping in parks.
The parks are not just for us, like for families or children or seniors or just the general public. There are people that are living there, and now there's a safety issue.
Forcing the park board to vote unanimously on a list of changes, including banning camping underneath trees or within 7 meters of bodies of water and cliffs, while also restricting tents from being larger than 10 feet by 10 feet.
Coming into effect immediately. This is not a dictatorship, we are working with the public. We're working with people who sleep. This is someone's home. So coming from a place of privilege, I don't want to say that this isn't a home. This is someone's home, and they don't have a home to go to. So we want to transition them into safe housing.
In the meantime, a former resident of the Crab Park in Kemen who says he's bounced around housing feels the changes are too restrictive.
It makes it very challenging in many ways. It's challenging for them. I see that. But we need to work together instead of closing off things. I find them inhumane, these decisions. I find them inconsiderate.
Now the new rules come into effect, with park board staff saying that the existing bylaw wasn't specific enough when it comes to sleeping in parks overnight. Now they're taking a wait-and-see approach to see how effective the changes will be. Craig Krause, CTV News, Vancouver.
Turning to tonight's weather, the North Coast is supposed to deal with periods of rain at a low of 3 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area is likely to get periods of rain with their low at 2 degrees. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District should see a chance of rain or flurries with the low at 0 degrees. On the North Coast, the week for them will deal with both rain and mixes of sun and cloud, with the high shifting from 7 to 11 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, their next week should see mostly sun and cloud mixes as well as rain of its own, while the high goes from 7 to 12 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes districts, the upcoming week will consist of some solely sunny days, but cloudy, rainy, and even days with flurries as well, with the high bouncing from 7 to 12 degrees too. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is utility work, maintenance, roadside brushing, paving operations, road sweeping, and construction work, plus the Usk ferry is out of service and the cable car is in effect. Highway 37 has some slippery sections while also having bridge maintenance and water pooling, and the Telegraph Creek Road has slippery and muddy sections. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, Surrey is now allowing cannabis stores to be licensed. Welcome back. 6 years after marijuana was legalized in Canada, Surrey Council is finally approving licensed cannabis stores. CTV Shannon Patterson now with reaction from the industry and details on how many retailers will be allowed to set up shop.
Since marijuana was legalized in 2018, Burb Cannabis has opened 4 retail locations in the Tri-Cities. And because there are no licensed cannabis stores in Surrey,
we actually service a lot of their customers. They come over the bridge and shop with us in Port Coquitlam, even some here where I'm standing here in Maple Ridge.
soon Surrey residents will be able to shop closer to home. On Monday, City Council voted unanimously to approve a framework for cannabis retailers to open in BC's second largest city.
We're super excited. I think a long time coming.
Cannabis has been a legal substance for a number of years now, and I think it's high time that residents of Surrey can buy cannabis in their own city, not having to buy online or go to other municipalities.
Under the framework, Surrey could have up to 12 cannabis stores, with 2 permitted in each of the 6 neighborhoods of Wally City Centre, Guildford, Fleetwood, Newton, South Surrey, and Cloverdale.
I think it'll be competitive.
Burb Cannabis, which has 8 locations in Metro Vancouver and Victoria, is hoping to open a store in Surrey.
Yeah, we're looking for locations. As you know, you need a whole bunch of things to line up in order to get one of these things.
Ultimately, it will be up to City Council to choose which cannabis retailers will get the green light.
I'd like to see a mix. I'd like to see who has the best offering that they can make to Surrey, the best locations. They've got to be in great, visible locations, not close to schools or playgrounds or any other place where kids frequent. But I think it's all about, when it comes down to it, is the proposal.
The big retailers, the big chains, yes, they're important as part of the economy, but let's give our local cannabis retailers a chance as well. There needs to be fairness in terms of the selection, in terms of who our retailers are going to be within Surrey.
Burb Cannabis wants to be one of those retailers, but regardless of whether it gets one of the 12 licenses.
This is a big win for the city, the residents, and the industry as a whole.
Shannon Patterson, CTV News, Maple Ridge.
Members of the Prime Minister's senior staff had to appear before the Foreign Interference Commission to give testimony on when they discovered Chinese meddling in the last 2 elections and what they knew. Here's CTV's Mike Lake-Couture with more.
The inquiry is getting closer to the center of power in this country and digging deeper into the foreign interference in the last 2 elections. During the 2019 campaign, CSIS told Justin Trudeau's election campaign director there were concerns about Han Dong's nomination, but Jeremy Broadhurst decided there was no action to be taken.
It has enough credibility that we're sharing it with you, but we can't point to, here's a voter that voted illegally. They couldn't point to a picture of a bus that had showed up and said, that's the bus we're talking about.
There are allegations that China may have tried to tamper with the Liberal nomination in a Toronto area riding by busing Chinese students to vote for Han Dong. Earlier, current and former senior government officials explained how persistent foreign interference has been as a threat to Canada.
Our ability and our knowledge of that threat is growing, and as are the capabilities of those who seek to disrupt and to interfere.
The statement came after questioning over a 2023 document referring to a meeting where Canada's spy agency briefed the Prime Minister's office. It calls foreign interference in Canada low risk and high reward because there are few legal and political consequences. And it explicitly says until foreign interference is viewed as an existential threat to Canadian democracy and governments forcefully and actively respond, these threats will persist.
I would say government has not yet taken all the actions because, in fact, this is an area where the policy approach of the government and the toolkit of the government has evolved.
The Prime Minister's National Security Advisor continues to insist just because foreign actors are trying to meddle in Canada's affairs, they're not always successful.
We haven't seen that those attempts and activities of FI had an impact in the two elections.
A testimony for this part of the inquiry concludes tomorrow when we'll hear directly from the Prime Minister, where he'll face questions about what he knew and when he knew it. Mike Lecouteur, CTV News, Ottawa.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is down 0.5 cents. The price of gold is down $14. Oil is up 98 cents. Natural gas is up 2 cents. Aluminum's down $14. In Toronto, the TSX is down 162.65 points. Venture index is down 0.87. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 422.16, and Nasdaq is down 136.28. Still ahead is a look at someone competing at the Olympics at a remarkably young age. Welcome back. It's every athlete's dream to make the Olympics, but it's rare to get there at 17 years old. Nicholas Jog of North Vancouver is the youngest male Canadian fencer to ever make the team. CTV's Yasmin Gandham has his story.
Nicholas Zhang started training at just 7 years old. He's now 17.
This is my dream. I want to become an Olympian. I want to go win the Olympics.
It was a dramatic overtime victory in the final qualification event in Costa Rica.
Good job.
Something his coach says was surreal.
Seeing a kid literally from a young age walk in here as a beginner to now going to the biggest stage in our sport shows the path that anything is possible.
Igor Gantsevich had his own dreams of going to the Olympics, but as an athlete.
It was the worst day of my life when I got injured and I tried to recover. I had 4 surgeries on my wrist, but when one door closes, many more open, and that day became one of the best days actually that has ever happened to me.
It's a huge win for the whole fencing club, who call themselves a family.
I think it's amazing for our young fencers especially because they can use this as motivation and inspiration for their own fencing and their own improvement.
Nicholas was born and raised in Richmond, but moved to North Vancouver recently to focus on fencing. For his family, they are eagerly awaiting to watch their son compete in Paris in July.
His first Olympic, and he been training for 10 years for this moment, and I really hope he can enjoy every single moment.
His advice for other aspiring Olympians?
Just never stop believing in what you're doing.
But the journey is not over yet. He has qualified, but now he has to perform.
Everyone is going to be at the best in the world.
Once he wraps up in Paris, Zhang is headed to Boston to train at Harvard.
Not bad for a high school kid not even finished grade 12 yet, already qualified to the Olympics and got recruited to Harvard.
Not bad indeed. Yasmin Gandham, CTV News, Vancouver.
Economists believe it could take months before consumers regain confidence and create a rebound in Canada's housing market, but pent-up demands remain in areas like BC. TD Bank economist Rishi Sodhi said Canada's housing market is like a coiled spring, and significant BC and Ontario demand could be sparked by activities like interest rate cuts. The Bank of Canada expects to hold its key rate steady this week after no rate movement since last year, but its direction isn't clear after that. Sodhi last said the uncertainty could keep some buyers cautious during spring, with modest rate cuts later this year, possibly spurring a surge in the market. BC Premier David Eby said the government asked for the Auditor General to review BC's grant programs after a clean technology firm alleged that there was a conflict of interest. Edison Motors, a BC-based trucking company, says accounting firm MNP was administrating a Clean BC grant and offered to provide services to help businesses with their applications. Eby next said that he thinks it's safe to say that Edison raised some serious questions that need to be fairly and independently investigated. MNP responded by saying it can't comment on specific grant applications due to privacy and legal requirements, but that these allegations are both false and misleading. Dale Culver's cousin said her family was shocked to learn the BC Prosecution Service was staying manslaughter charges against the two officers who were charged in his death. Debbie Pierre stated that the family was informed Thursday that the service believed that there would be a reasonable prospect of a conviction in the case due to conflicting pathologist reports. Culver of the Gitxsan and Wet'suwet'en nations was arrested in Prince George on July 18, 2017 and died while in custody. Pierre next stated that her family will return to court next month for charges against 3 other officers that were accused of attempting to obstruct justice in the case. That's all of our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin. Thanks for watching.